Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. Today we're definitely going to bring a bat, or at least some sort of wood. We're going to meet my friend Chip, and Chip's going to tell us a little bit about everything, about being the father of three daughters, man. I've spoken about this on the show many times, and boy, oh boy, holy moly, as I often say. But it's great. But he's also going to talk about leadership, and talk to us about balance and what we do, and the energies that we use to move things forward. How are you doing today, Chip?
Dave, I'm so good. I can't even stand myself. Of course, that's what I hear a lot is they can't stand me.
Okay, well, I'm sure that's not true, or partially true. I know for me it's partially true. I represent that very well. So, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself? I'd love you to introduce yourself better than anything that I could do. You know yourself
Well,
better than
well,
me.
thank you very much. And I kind of bill myself as a man with a few stories and a lathe and a pocket knife. And I so for the last 30 years, I've been an executive coach.
Mhm.
I've worked with a lot of incredible leaders from across a lot of different industries, a lot in the logistics space. But more than that, now that I'm kind of on the back nine of my career, I have a lathe, and I love to work on the lathe. I love to create. I've written a number of books. I've got two out right now. I've got another one coming out this fall,
Hmm.
and that's been fun as well. In fact, the one this fall is the first time I've written fiction, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm pretty proud of it, and better yet, the publisher is really excited to get it. So, that's always a plus. Um, and I am a girl dad. I've got three daughters. My wife and I have been married 42 years, and
Congratulations.
we've done a commendable job. I think it's a commendable job, at least, of raising three daughters. And they're all great people. My oldest daughter works for me. My middle daughter works for my wife, and my youngest daughter works for another company. But she's always around. She's about 20 minutes from us, and we have one big happy family. Dogs, cats, kids, all that kind of stuff, and we have a pretty good life.
That's awesome. How is it working with your children? I have a dream that I would love my girls to work with me, but when I talk to them about some of the things I do, they're like, "Yeah, I have no interest in that." I'm like,
Well, my daughter Christine is her name, and she's my admin. She does all the stuff that I just don't want to do.
"Ah, good."
Yeah, she does the billing. She does keeps track of my schedule, and my schedule is pretty crazy. And she does a lot of my travel stuff, and books the hotels and does the rental cars and all that kind of stuff. So she does, like I said, she does all the stuff that I don't want to do, and she does all the stuff that doesn't make me money.
Mm.
It's been a real blessing and a joy. There are some frustrations about working with family. I'm sure you've heard them from some of your guests, but overall, it's been great.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, right? There's a lot of good things. I mean, being a father, I talk a lot about it, but it really is one of the things that I do enjoy doing. When it's going right, man, I love it. And when it's not, I love it a lot less. But I love my kids all the time, so that doesn't matter. It's not
Yeah.
conditional on what they do or what I do. It just is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and the one thing that and excuse me, I know you're going to ask a question, but my oldest daughter loves to explore,
mm,
and so we travel quite often. And we were just in Jacksonville last week and started to explore, look, a bunch of neighborhoods. We're going to be in St. Louis in a few weeks, and um, she has never been up the Arch, so we're planning on going up the Arch and going to the hill. I don't know if you've ever
yep,
been in
yep.
St. Louis, but yeah,
I've not been to St. Louis yet, but I know about the Hill. I know about the Arch, and I think there's also a really big pizza place that has like a table size pizza. I remember, I used to do a lot of traveling around the country training people when I was in corporate, how to identify counterfeits and things like that. So I would always look at all these places, and I was supposed to go to St. Louis uh, one time, but then there was a snowstorm, and I was like, I'm not getting stuck in either Chicago or Cleveland. Those are the two potential stops, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. But it's been a real joy because, like I said, I love to explore. She loves to explore. So when we're not on the clock, we get in the car and cruise neighborhoods and see what it's all about.
Yeah, well, that's the fun part of exploring. And you mentioned something about a fiction book, and I also I've written a few books, and I really have gotten into the fiction writing. So I know that might not have been a topic that we were going to talk about, but how'd you decide or take the jump into that you wanted to do fiction writing?
Well, the two books that I've got out now. So it came out last October. It's called Small Decisions, Big Shifts, which is about my coaching philosophy. So it was a book I really had to write. It was a book that just kind of was screaming to get out of me. The second one, and the story about that one is it took me about 10 years to write it, but actually it was more like about 6 or 7 years in a drawer. And then, then there's a story that goes along with how I got back into writing. But the next book, which is called Every Dog Has Its Day, is it's reflections on life, love, and the lathe. And that just flowed out in about a month and a half. I got that one done, and that was published in March. Um, so I was starting down the path of writing this one book, and a colleague of mine said, I'm really surprised. You know a lot about the third party logistics business and family businesses. I'm surprised you're not writing about that. And I went,
Mm,
gee, that makes so much sense. So I put the other one on hold and wrote that. And it took me about 6 months to write it, but it was, you know, it's it's so much different writing dialogue.
hmm.
It's so much
Sure.
written. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so much different writing realistic scene settings and that kind of stuff. It really was a challenge, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it is a lot of fun, and because I've written both as well, when you write those books, the fiction, I get lost. Like there's times that I'm writing or at least coming up with concepts. I hear how I explain it is those people are alive. They just needed to get out, and I was the birthing. I was like the doula going, writing doula, and I don't really hear those voices in my head, but I can picture myself in those situations as an observer. So it's that fly on the wall type of thinking.
It is a completely different challenge, and I'm sure it was fun for you. It was really fun for me.
Yeah. Now, so how did you get into coaching? So let's go back into that leadership piece, because it's all how it forms us. Uh, It's logistic.
Yeah.
People don't respect logistics enough. That was another thing that I saw out of your profile. And one of my specialties has always been the guy who gets people from A to B. I've either been the driver or even when I was in corporate America, when I started working at law firms, I was the trial manager. So I helped get the trial team, all the boxes there, and at one point, this is pre tech big technology. I was on a plane with $2 million worth of discs on the old OCR when you had OCR documents. This was a mid '90s, and they were like, you cannot let this go into check lab luggage. You're responsible. I had to like sign like a waiver. Um, I was worried till I
Yeah.
got down there. But so
Yeah.
how did that transform you in some of your way of thinking?
Well, okay, so in May of '98, I got laid off from a job in California. And I called my wife and I said, "Hey, I just got the package, and she said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to do it here, whatever that is."
Mm,
So we were in LA for about 13 years, and it was about time the vacation was up, or as I say, it was about time the sentence was up, and we decided to move to North Carolina. So I got to North Carolina, and I knew I didn't want to work for anybody else. I knew that I wanted to hang my own shingle. All the people that I really respected and admired had hung their own shingle. So I knew that's what I was going to do when I got back here. And I found a company. I always was good on my feet, so being a speaker was probably going to happen. And I wanted to be a platform speaker and that kind of thing. Um, so I found a company called Resource Associates Corporation in Pennsylvania, and they had materials and materials you could use to run classes and do leadership kind of things. And I met a guy through that, a guy named David Herdlinger. But I met a guy through that who had started to uncover this whole coaching thing. So if you think about it, 27 years ago, people didn't really know what coaching was.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
and wouldn't
nobody.
even talk about it. I mean, it wasn't even, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and the big question was, hey, are you talking about therapy? And so coaching was such a different radical concept, but he had gotten the whole thing figured out. Well, I mean, he and I kind of figured it out together and with a few other people. And the one thing that was really attractive is, I was traveling a little bit at the time. You could talk to people all over the country, all over the world
Mm,
from your living room. And oh yeah, you charge them for talking to you. So that was pretty attractive. And so I started doing some coaching more locally. Most of my business was around Charlotte. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And most of my business was around here. And um, what happened to take me in the logistics business and to take me nationwide, actually worldwide, was I was giving a speech at a Rotary Club here in Charlotte. And one of the guys there was the head of the Southeastern Warehouse Association. And he came up to me after the speech and he said, "Hey, you got to come speak at our conference in this fall." So I did, and I got to know some people in the warehousing business, in the logistics business. And shortly after that, when I gave this talk at the Southeastern Warehouse Association, a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm with the International Warehouse Logistics Association. You got to come and speak at our convention in Vegas in February." And it's like, wow, okay. So, and I got to know people and got to know people in the business. And when I was out at the conference in Vegas. I joined the association, which I didn't have two nickels rubbed together, but I joined it anyway and spent way too much on it. But that's been really good. And so, for the last 22 years, I've been involved in the logistics business. I've worked with some incredible companies. They fired the executive director when just in the meantime when I was there at the SWA conference, and they asked me to do assessment work for the person coming in. And at the conference, I got a chance to sit and talk with the executive board about the person that they had selected and telling them how to work together. Every one of those people at the executive board meeting ended up being clients of mine. And I just had some pretty incredible opportunities. A guy who's been a friend of mine for a long, long time and a client, guy named Herb Shear was the owner of a company called Genco in Pittsburgh, and they were great clients until they sold in 2015. Um, Kenco, I worked with Kenco for a number of years, and it's just been a great life. But I've had the opportunity to coach a number of people. The secret of the business, though, is most people don't make a great living in coaching. So it's all of the assessment work and the classes that I run. And so I've got a client called Haskell. It's the Haskell company. They're a design build construction company.
Mm.
Their headquarters are down in Jacksonville, Florida, and they've got offices all over the world as well. And I've run their leadership program for the last 17 years. I coach a number of people who have coached the CEO and a number of other people there. And it's been a wild ride. It really has been, but
Well,
it's been a great ride.
that's the beauty of, you know, everything is that it really does become a wild ride. I mean, I was just on an interview the other day. I was being interviewed, and they're like, what song would you come to? And I go, it's, well, Grateful Dead. What a strange wild ride, right? There's so many, or a long winding road by Paul McCartney and Wings. But it's really a truth of there are no straight lines, but
Mhm.
the curves really start turning into it. And that's where I want to ask you about your hobby and how do you use that to move some of your energy and but also to look at things because when you're
Yeah.
creative, you see things from different angles. And the same thing would
Yeah.
be with your wood hobbies.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So in 2012 I had a stroke, and I don't like to make the stroke the headline, but I was kind of messed up with the stroke. I've
Yeah.
recovered from it, and
Good.
it's not it's something that happened. It was um, pretty pivotal in my development, I guess, if you want to say that. But again, I don't like to make that the headline. But one of the things that came out of the stroke is my wife got me a lathe for Christmas,
Mm.
and all of a sudden a whole different world opened up. And my cognition was coming back pretty well after the stroke, but it wasn't all the way there. And the lathe, maybe it was working, the body movements or just having to pay attention to a 30-pound chunk of spinning wood that wanted to take your head off. Maybe it was paying attention to that improved the cognition. But I just fell in love, and a the small lathe ended up being a bigger lathe, and led to other lathes. And
Right.
my
Well,
wife has
once you
told
go
me
down that
that
road, right. Once you go down that
yeah,
road, yeah.
it's like having a
But
boat. You can never get a big enough boat, right?
yeah. Well, I think that's all about the shifts that happen in our lives and how it shapes things. And that's really where I was going to, take this on that journey. And that is, I mean, even the handshake that you got when you were let go. I too had gotten a handshake 2.5 years ago to saying, hey, you're 55, thanks a lot. We'll give you a golden handshake, but uh, you can come to work, but just not here. Uh, you know,
You come to work, but we're not giving you a paycheck.
yeah. But so those are the changes that come in our lives. What would you suggest with people? I mean, you kind of knew once you got that handshake, uh, that you wanted to make a wholesale change, not only in the fact that you didn't want to work for somebody, but you went from the West Coast to
Yeah.
the East Coast, completely different, even philosophies. In North Carolina is different than California a little bit.
Well, okay. So I was a lobbyist on the West Coast, and everybody knew me in the South
Okay.
Bay area of Los Angeles. People thought that I owned the company that I worked for, and it was pretty heady stuff. But because I was the public face, I was all the golf tournaments and all the telethons and everything else. And we moved to North Carolina, and I knew exactly no one.
Hmm.
And that is it's revelatory, but it's also pretty daunting, because you've got to start everything from scratch. You've got to build your credibility. You've got to learn the layout of the land. You've got to learn everything. And oh my God, that if I had it to do all over, I'm not sure I'd do it all over the same way. But it worked out. But the first 5 years were pretty tough. But my favorite saying is Semper Gumby. And Semper Gumby means Semper is always,
Right.
which is Semper Fi is
Mhm.
always faithful. And Gumby, well, do you remember
Yeah,
Gumby?
I do know Gumby. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Gumby is this claymation character that Art Clokey came up with years ago, and Gumby is flexible.
Mm.
You know, he can slide under doors, he can move
Right.
his body in all kinds of ways. So Semper Gumby is always flexible. And that is that's the thing that I live by is always flexible. It's like, look, you may start out down one path and it becomes difficult to do, or is blocked off to you, and you got to switch gears. You got to change your ways of doing things. You've got to change your mind, and so you got to be flexible.
Yeah, and so how do you do that when you're working with this? A lot of executives I've worked with, senior executives at some big companies. Um, how would you suggest to do that? Because there's sometimes, right, they get to that position, they some people feel that they know all the answers, or definitely traditionally they did. Now I think there's a different mindset in that I don't know the answers. I'm the guy who's going to make the decision, but they're willing to be a little bit more open to hearing some other alternative possibilities.
So the book that I'm coming out in October is called Handoffs, and it's about a family logistics business. And it is about the 82-year-old owner of the company
Mm.
who is not flexible at all. And he's got a 54-year-old son who is pretty emasculated by the old man. And it's all about family business and succession and handoffs. So the one thing that you learn is that people hang on too long. So in other words, somebody
Yep.
that maybe should retire at some point or should do something else or be a different part of the business, just holds on. And their identity is so wrapped up in that flexibility doesn't allow it. So, the first thing I'd say is that find a way to shift your identity from something that you need or that you think needs you. And you're absolutely right. People believe they're the smartest person in the room. People believe that they can't that nobody else, like their son or daughter, can't do what I do. So they believe that everything has to fall on their shoulders. And I call it hubris.
Sure, a lot of times it is. It's I could do it, or we don't realize at times how much we're able to hand off. Yes, you could do it better because you've been doing it for 70 years or whatever you've been doing it for, but it's also just as effective teaching somebody to do it properly. And sometimes there's more efficient ways also, right? It, because of age and how that comes at us. How do because handing off is that really difficult part, right? That delegation part. How would you
Mhm.
suggest people like that, or people observe themselves as being afraid of the handoff?
Well, the first thing is that it's okay to be afraid,
Right.
but you've got to admit it, and you've got to name it, and you've got to understand it, and you've got to be self-aware enough to be able to understand that you are afraid,
Mm.
and that's okay. And whether you're talking to a coach or whether you're talking to a therapist or whether you're talking to your spouse, you got to talk to somebody about that fear. Um, but so I do a number of 360-degree valuations. You know what a
Yeah,
360
I know
is.
what a 360 is.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say that fully 80% of the 360s I do have delegation as one of the areas for development.
Yep.
So in your estimation, what is delegation all about? What are the blocks to delegation?
Well, some of it's control. I know when I've worked with people, it's that they're afraid to let go a little bit of the control, And also but I can do it. Until, the type of employee I was let me do it. If I'm doing something wrong, let me know along the way, and just let me do it. I'll get it done. But it takes trust to do that. A lot of people, I remember that was one of the trials I was on. They were like, "No, your title is X. I never work with somebody like that." And my boss at that time knew who I was and what I did, and they were like, give him 2 weeks. If in 2 weeks you don't like him, I'll give you anybody in the firm to do it." And that's what it is some people are so inflexible that they can't thinking of mindset. I mean, and probably I know in a law firm setting, the lawyers and the secretaries and the paralegals, I know what it looks like on TV, but when you get them all together in a party, they're each in a separate group. And
Yeah.
the same thing goes in corporate. Everybody stays in their little departments or rankings.
So control is a big thing,
Hmm.
because you feel like you have to be in control. And what I learned from years of family therapy is the more in control you think you are, the less in control you actually are.
Correct.
Trust is a huge thing
Mm.
because you've got to be able to trust your people. You've got to be able to trust that they are smarter in different ways, and that goes to control too, because if you believe there's only one way to do something and your way is the right way, you're going to have a really difficult time expressing that you're wrong.
Yeah.
And that goes to trust. And so really delegation is about trust. Really delegation is about not believing you're the smartest person in the room. And I can't remember what CEO said it, but one CEO said, and I get this quote, I like this quote, is that if I'm the smartest person in the room, I probably shouldn't be in that room.
Yep. I say that all the time. It's part of your identity, right? So some people need that. I have to be the smartest guy in the room, but I think the real, not I think I know the real leaders don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. They'll be the
Yeah.
one who makes the decision, but they need to have the right input so that way they can make the best decision.
Well, David, we spend our lives being judged and compensated for what we do.
Mm,
Think about that. From the time that you're in school, bring home your report cards,
right.
and throughout our life, and especially in the first few stages of our career, we're judged for what we do. And someday along the way, you become a leader. You have people that are responsible to you.
Yeah.
And that shifts it. And that shifts it from a way of doing to a way of being. And that's so important, is that some people never get to that way of being. Some people can't let go. But the importance is to let go, because, especially in talking about developing other people, um, with somebody gave you a shot sometime,
Right.
right? So why are you holding on to things so tight that you aren't giving the shot to the other person?
100%. And that's the frustrating part, especially as a young person. I was like, just let me do it. Like if I mess up, I'll be more than happy to take whatever,
Mm.
but a lot of people don't. And I think that's where, how do we pass on something without losing ourselves in the process, right? That's also part of the handoff, that people are afraid that I'm going to lose, you know, that, connection, that part of the project.
Well, David, we tell stories. And that's really important, is that you can't prescribe how someone's going to do things, but you can tell stories. And
Mhm.
you can tell stories about situations you've been in, or sales calls you've been on, or managers that you've had that were good or bad. But you can tell stories. And I learned that fairly late in life. I mean, I was not a good manager for the first couple of career stops. In fact, I think the reason I do what I'm doing now is because I'm doing penance for some of the crappy things that I did as a boss the first few times. I think I was a boss the first time at 25 years old, and I had no more business being a boss at 25 years old than the man in the moon. But yeah, it's just um, you just have to get over yourself. That's really what it is. You have to get over yourself.
Yeah, I think you have to have that the humility to understand that because leadership is not always theory, right? You have all the people who read the books, but it's like what Mike Tyson says: everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I know when I've been in my situations, I can think of a number where I just did what I had to do in the moment, legally and everything. I mean, there's one time where I'm working on a merger. We're flying from Toronto. We ran out of time. I was supposed to drive the documents from Toronto to the FTC, and they were like, "All right, we're not. We're just going to rent a corporate jet, and we'll get you the corporate jet." All right, great, no problem. It's a little small job. Well, this is pre 9/11, and one, I didn't have my passport. I just had my license. Two, I was like, okay, now I have 50 boxes in a jet. How am I going to get the boxes from the jet to the next location? And we had an office. The law firm I was working for had an office, and I just made rules. I just was like calling people up. I was like, "You better have this at the airport and this and that." And when I got off, I came back, and a partner called me into the room and was like, "What'd you just do?" I go, "I got it all done." They go, "Yeah." They go, "You use my name, you use this." I go, "Was I wrong?" They're like, "No, no, you were right. You didn't tell me you were going to do it." I was like, I was in the middle. I was at the airport. We had like an hour to get from, the DC airport, from the private hangars to the FTC. What did you want me to do? Sometimes you have to ask for apology then permission.
Hey, David,
Yep.
do you have a second? I've been asked to something that's really important.
Yep. Sure. I'll put it on pause. Pause.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes we just have to ask permission. We ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah. 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 Well, here's the other thing too is that we can't know everything, right?
Hmm.
I mean, the rate of human knowledge is doubling every 2 years.
Yep.
So we can't know everything. And that means that we can't know how to do everything. And so is it more important to work on the outcomes and the result, or is it more important to work on the method?
Mm.
And as long as the method as long as the method is legal and
Right.
moral and ethical and all that kind of stuff, um, you know, so
Yeah, no, I guess it's those small decisions you have to make in those big shifts to make a big shift so as we navigate, not only life, but the decisions. You don't get a timeout, right? This isn't
right.
basketball, football, or anything. There's no timeouts.
Can you hold on just a second?
Yeah. Again. So as we go through, it's how do you, as a leadership piece, what are the ways that we could look at things more practically, right? Again, sometimes you're in those situations and but it's making those changes, how we practically look at it, but how we can make changes to modify the things that aren't working right? The recalibrations in some ways I talk about.
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind. First of all, yeah, I think it's important to have a coach or a mentor or someone that is willing to be straight with you about the things that you're good at and about the things that you could be better at.
Mm.
Um, I think that's incredibly important because listen, if you're talking to your spouse or if you're talking to your best friend, they're going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yep.
Um, if you were talking with a coach, the coach is there for you. The coach is not there to make you feel good. The coach is there to be straight with you, and a mentor should do the same thing.
Correct.
So that's number one. The other thing is that it is a mindset. It's being aware of what you don't know.
Mm.
And it comes under the heading of being curious. You know, and especially as I get older, I think the thing that sets me apart from people that are my age that are retired and they've stopped their curiosity. They've stopped thinking about, different things and they've stopped wanting to know how things work. And they just have said, I don't need that anymore. And my God, curiosity is just so important. I mean, it's so important to stop aging. It's so important to in all our lives.
Yeah, well, I think that's what it is. We talk about on the show often about that you have to keep growing. Keep
Yeah.
always doing things. Risk, take risks, still take risks no matter what age, as long as it's appropriate risks. Again, when I go risk well, it's one of those things of hey, is there a risk? Everything there's a risk involved, but if you risk well and you've thought it out, whatever happens, happens. And you learn how to adjust to it, building that resilience. It's that fine tuning. I'm guessing. I'm not a woodworker, but you have a piece. You might have the block of wood at the beginning, but how it starts happening, and but then you don't find. Then you find something as you're going deeper within the wood, right? And then it chips, or the way the vein is cut, and you're
Or
like, all right.
there's a crack in it that you didn't see or whatever. Yeah, yeah. The one thing that I talk about quite a bit is the small decisions that lead to some of the big shifts.
Hmm.
So after the stroke, I lost 110 pounds. I started walking. I couldn't walk around the block after the stroke. In 2 years, I walked 3,500 miles.
Nice.
It's a small decision every day to strap on your shoes and put on your workout clothes and get your ass out and walk around the neighborhood or walk around several neighborhoods. It's a small decision every day.
Yep.
And you can either make that decision or make a different decision, and a different decision is going to lead to a different outcome. So, if you want to make some changes in your life, you've got to make those small decisions every day. You've got to make those things that you're going to do that are different. Because we all get swallowed up in the whirlwind. The whirlwind is the things we do every day, the taking care of the kids, the going to church or going to work or going to school or going to whatever, and the whirlwind can suck us down. And how do we break through that?
Right.
How do we find the things that are really important to us to make change?
Yeah, it's so hard, and the same thing. I didn't have a stroke. 2 months ago, I actually had um, a heart situation. I was overweight, and I went to a cardiologist. And long story, within 2 weeks, I was underneath the knife for the angio. I got an angioplasty, and they put a stent in. And then I've reduced 17 pounds since then. And you
That's
make that
great.
decision. Like everybody's like, oh, well, Wegovy and all those drugs, and I'm like, no, I got it the right way. Uh, you know, it's the mindset shift that we have, or many of us have, because when the doctors were like, you have to change your diet, I'm like, it's done. And they thought I was kind of blowing them off, and I was like, no. I've now ate things that I would have never ate if I didn't have to. And also,
Kale,
yeah,
kale especially, right?
yeah. See, I don't like. I never liked kale, but I've tried.
Oh, I think kale sucks,
Yeah,
really.
well, I've tried arugula and spinach. I've had more spinach than I had previous. Portobello mushrooms. I used to love barbecuing them for others, but now guess what? I have once or twice a week. I have the mini portobellos, and it you do what you got to do. And they're not bad. And you know, I haven't had my ice cream. I haven't had junk food. It's choices that we make. And I think that's really where we go back to everything. It's the choices we make that are intentional. When you're a leader, that's why getting that right information is so important. And the choices you make are not just because I feel it. It's not only gut feelings. It's being educated, risking well, where I talk about that. Those are the right ways to do it, to go in with the best information, go in with an idea of how it goes, but also be,
Yeah,
gonna be flexible to, when things goes, sideways, as they sometimes do, in life and in general, be flexible enough to move that, move to that direction or be open to moving in a
yeah.
different direction.
Yeah, and by the way, the GLP-1s are not a bad thing. If that's what you need to get it done, then I'm all for that.
Yeah, I love science, but it's one of those things that they're great. I mean, they are great. I'm not gonna complain because I believe all of those things. I worked in the
Hmm.
pharmaceutical industry, so I believe in all the science. It's just having to be on it the rest of your life. I again, at least my personal, they started giving me all this medication, right? When I got sick, I wasn't on any medication. And I said,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
when do I get off of this medication? Not
And they
because
said never.
well, they said never, but I'm like, yeah, well, just wait, because right now, their version of high blood pressure was not my version in that, I was at 130 over 90, not crazy. And now I'm right where I should be, because I started eating right.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I mean, the same thing with the cholesterol. They were like, "Oh, you're at 130." I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." And that used to be the good number. Again, I worked for regarding cholesterol. So again, I'm not telling anybody. I'm not giving any medical advice. Everybody gets to make their own choice for their body.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
So the big shifts that you talk about, that we keep learning, exponentially more and more. What are some things that you're looking to look forward to expand yourself and your horizon?
Um, I want to keep writing, and I really enjoy that. I enjoy the process.
Mhm.
I've been on a great number of podcasts over the last 6 months, and I'm having a blast with that. How many times would a guy from Brooklyn meet a guy down in North Carolina?
It's incredible, and that's one of the reasons why I love podcasting and connections. And we do similar things, go at it differently, but we would have probably never met, or we might have met in an airport somewhere, but
We might have.
we wouldn't have had that conversation. And that's the great part about these podcasts and the ability to have these conversations.
Yeah, yeah. I talked to somebody from Singapore this morning. Last week, I talked to somebody from New Zealand, and there's a guy that runs a podcast out of Iceland, and what a joy, Just it's so cool to talk to those people. And the other thing is, I really want to get better at AI. And
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that means, but I use AI. Um, I have taken the time to get to know what the AI market is all about and some of the things that are going on with AI. But there's so much that I can automate in my life that
Well,
would be easy to automate.
and I think that's one of the things as a leader, as a true leader, you're always looking at things to make your life easier, not just continuing to do the things that you've been doing for a while, and knowing what new resources, right? If not, we'd all be riding horses, right? Uh, so it really is that growth mentality that we talked about earlier about continuing to grow and to expand ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
As for
Yeah.
the,
Oh, go ahead. I'm
no, you
sorry.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and it's just again, it's being curious, right?
Yeah, no, and the last part that I'm going to be curious of as we get closer to the end of our episode is I have people walk into the Magic Garden, right? You know, you've given us a lot of seeds of knowledge. Is there one more seed or
Hold on just a second. Hold on.